Hey everybody, and welcome back to the channel. And today we have the first place winner of Sorven's non-meta tournament number 3. Go ahead and introduce yourself and tell everyone what you played.
Hi, my name is Giant Caliber. I go by the name iPone in Dueling Book. Uh, I ended up winning the Soren's non-meta tournament 3 with Unchained.
Yeah, and I think that for the most part, this list is a pretty standard list. I think all of these 5 Unchained monsters are all like the main deck monsters, and for the most part, I think it's like pretty standard outside of maybe playing like the 2 copies of the Soul of Disaster. But go ahead and explain your ratios, I guess, and your thought process behind that.
Right, so going into the tournament, I was looking through like a list of list of decks that I could possibly play. Like, I think I was looking at like Reddit through like the budget like deck list, like see like what's good or not. Unchained happened to pop up as one of them. And I was just sold on the idea of playing Unchained.
Hmm.
And then I was looking through like the different iterations of it. Some of the iterations I saw had like 2 Sarama and then 2 Tour Guide, but then I didn't like the idea of Tour Guide as much because it's just hand trap bait. Where I feel like in this format, people are gonna play Effect Veiler or like Infinite Permanency, even if it's at 1 copy.
Yeah, I definitely feel like Effect Veiler is pretty much a staple in this format, and your
Right.
deck
So I
definitely
didn't
does
want
not lose to Effect Veiler.
like the deck wouldn't lose the Effect Veiler unless I put in Tour Guide. So
Right.
that's why I opted out for it and went for the third Sarama, which I think really helped because
Hmm.
there is a decent amount of grind game and Sarama is like the thing that keeps the grind game going.
Right. I definitely think
And
the tour
then
guide is a cool option since you can make tons of rank threes. Um, I think you mentioned
yeah, you can make
earlier you can make the Phantom Knights of Breaksword and a couple other
uh,
cards. But
and then yeah, Cherubini to
yeah,
send like your
Cherubini.
Dark Spirit of Banishment or like there was another one to consider that that one I forgot its name, but I think it was if your opponent activates a card effect or monster effect or something like that, and then you get to special summon a level 8. It
Hmm.
loses its effects on field, but then it has the same recursion as Dark Spirit of Banishment.
Right. I wouldn't know what card that is, but
You I don't think it's worth looking it up
okay,
to be
okay. But it's
honest.
basically just another a
Yeah,
similar card to Dark Spirit of
a very
Banishment.
similar card to Dark Spirit of Banishment, and then I think like you mentioned, I ran two dog just because of desires. That
Right.
was really the only logic behind two dog because you don't want to draw into the dog.
Right. I think there was like
It
one time where it came up that you used the second one, but obviously, like you said, I don't think it's like worth losing the consistency to play
like if
to
you
if you're
really
not playing
want doggle
desires.
back, just get Sarama to get the doggle back.
Right. Yeah.
Like yeah, sure, it'll come in set, or you could set I think the trap card back if you have that option, if you really need to recur
Hmm.
it, but yeah, don't play multiple doggies unless you're playing desires.
Right. And then I think for like your hand trap lineup, go ahead and like explain. You're playing the hand traps, so obviously the three effect feather, the one imperm, and the three ghost ogre. So what was your thought process behind these specifically? Like you have them
S-
ghost mortar in the side deck, obviously, but
right, right. Um, yeah, so about the hand trap lineups, I was just looking through last tournament's winners, and the one thing I noticed about all of them is that they all were like somewhat vulnerable to both effect feather and ghost ogre.
right.
And to me, those were like the best hand traps I felt for what I saw, and that's why I opted to run Effect Flavor Ghost Ogre and Infinite Impermanence, which is at 1 copy. In terms of Ogre, uh, it did come up maybe. Even if it didn't, I don't think it was a bad decision. It would do something, I believe,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
it could always be pushed out for a different card.
Exactly. Like I think that I mean obviously you won, so clearly like the ghost ogres were or maybe not specifically the ghost ogre, but obviously the card is good enough. Otherwise, it probably wouldn't have got you there at some point. But
I felt like it was worth putting in.
right, exactly. And so I mean, worst case scenario, like you just have it and it's kind of a dead card. But I mean, the rest of your hand is still probably pretty good. So I think
Right.
like the Dark Spirit of Banishment was actually a really cool option. I actually have never seen this card before, so it definitely caught me off guard when you activated this. And since it activates in the damage step, it's really interesting because it stops the attack in general, and they can't redeclare because
Nope.
it's in the damage step. So that is a really cool interaction with the card just by itself. But what did you think about the Dark Spirit?
I think it's a good card to have at one copy
Mm,
for just like you said, it's more the surprise element.
mm,
And occasionally the recursion element does come up, like say you discard it off of Twin Twisters and later on you send like your dog off of its own effect or
mm,
your abominable gets destroyed.
right.
Then you get the Dark Spirit of Banishment back. It does come up in those instances, but I think for the most part, this tournament, I did have moments where I got it, but it wasn't enough to like win me the game. So, if you want, like, say if anyone else is playing Unchained, like they could cut it and they're not, playing it wrong.
Yeah, you're not losing a
I
whole
just think,
lot, but
yeah, they're not
it's
losing a
very
whole lot,
cool.
but I think it's just a really nice tech option because people don't expect it.
Yeah. And then obviously the pots here. It was really
Right.
interesting that you opted to play both Desires and Extravagance. But I guess it makes sense just because like the extra draw power is just insane.
It,
And
it was
so,
just I mean, I think you mentioned it earlier. The deck list is very standard, and I felt like in a very standard list, you just want to maximize on your ability to see more cards.
right.
So then I felt like I had to run both Desires and Extravagance,
Hmm.
and like I feel like that I was able to build a deck so I could afford to do both and do pretty well with it.
Yeah. And then for the rest of the spells, like Abomination's Prison is like insane just because by itself it's a one card starter. I think that you mentioned a while earlier that this is typically also just like to fix your hand as well, which I mean, since it's
Yeah,
technically just a Rhoda for your entire deck. So it's just insane.
yeah, the fact that it could one card combo is nice. Usually you're just using it to fix your hand to like I think the best card to fetch off of it would be Aruha.
Hmm.
And then if in the grind game it will be Sarama.
Right. I
But yeah,
definitely think
it's a
that,
very good card.
yeah, it's
I like
very,
it.
very good. Just being able to be three extra copies of your entire
And
deck.
the fact that you could pop it in that same turn
Yeah,
and
because
get the
it's not.
monster off of it is just
Yeah, you can use both
really
effects in the same turn, which is just crazy with it.
I felt like you should have only had one option, but I guess we have both, so I guess that's really nice.
Yeah. And then the Call by
And
the
then
Grave. I think you mentioned earlier that the deck isn't really susceptible to hand traps, so I think it's interesting that you decided to opt to
I
play this even
felt
if you're not like super losing to hand traps, I guess. But
yeah,
what's your
like
thoughts?
against like Valor Ogre or maybe in fringe cases like D Crow or Ghost Spell if that were to ever pop up.
Hmm.
It's not like the end of the world to get hit by those,
Right.
but I still felt like Call by the Grave was just a really good way to interact with the opponent as a go first card. Like I can negate hand traps, I can negate cards in the graveyard. It's just a very good card to have if you're running first,
Hmm.
even if it's not for the hand traps.
Yeah, that makes
And
sense.
then going to the traps, it's more or less the standard 3/3. I think you should run 3/3 unless you're playing like a different variant of Unchained, like Evil Eye Unchained, but nobody
Right.
really talks about that. And Torrents of Tribute, uh, it's just a really good. It's a really good card for Unchained. You're going first, well, with this list, and I felt like it was better to go first with this with Unchained because you have main deck trap cards that I feel like would only you know
They would
be more
only,
than just
yeah,
simply pop fodder.
right. Because when you're going second, these don't really do anything other than like
Yeah, they're
fodder
just
for
pop
a
fodder.
Ruha.
Yeah, they're just pop fodder for going second. So going first, those cards actually do more than that. And then torrential is just wipe the whole board. You get your unchained monsters still.
Right. And obviously you just cited like the dark holes for going second because
Right.
like
It's a
it's
very
essentially the
easy
same
side,
thing. Yeah.
and that's part of like my deck building philosophy. Sometimes that I like to max out my ratios when I can,
Hmm.
and that's why you see like my side deck is also just maxed out, more or less for what they're supposed to do.
Right. It's just it seems like
Uh,
really easy side outs like the dark holes for the torrentials, and I'm
uh-huh.
assuming you'd probably do something like the call by the graves for the tone twisters, something
That's
like
one way
that,
to do it.
or maybe like the ghost
I
ogres.
yeah, I could replace like the hand traps for it as well.
Yeah.
And the thing about why I have Twin Twisters over Cosmic, well, I know we're kind of jumping ahead.
Yeah, we can come
It's
back to that in a sec if you want.
yeah,
Okay, so
yeah,
we'll go over
we
to
can,
the extra
yeah,
deck. So obviously, since the extravagance is in your list, you're already opting to play three of all of your Unchained monsters, since they're all
right.
just really solid, just being
Only,
able to link
or
up.
probably the only incorrect decision I made was running three was it a Link 4? Forgot its name.
Abomination.
Yeah, Abomination. Yeah, that was the only one that I felt like running three of was probably not the best idea
Yeah,
because I felt like a lot of times I made it, it just got destroyed, and
right.
and
And you could
I
probably
was
just
like,
make any other link for in this case. Like, you could play something like, I mean, obviously you could link up into like Topologic Bomber Dragon. Um,
uh-huh.
uh, let's see what else. You could probably just go into. I think you can go straight into Unicorn from like Rage, or like any. Yeah, just not any
Yeah.
Nightmare, obviously, because they're different attributes. But you can still go into like Unicorn from Rage, which is really nice, being able to basically be an IP, if that makes sense, for the deck,
Yes,
which is really
it
nice.
is an IP, but with your opponent's monster, so
Right. So
it's really
that's really
busted.
crazy. Also, like Topologic Zero Boros would have been, I think, like possibly a better option than like all three copies of Abomination.
Yeah, that's probably what I would have done
Yeah.
in retrospect.
I'm not. I
But
can't
I
think of
guess
any
going
others off the
into
top
it,
of my head.
I guess going into it, I thought that I really wanted to end on Abomination and then just outgrind people with Abomination's destroying effect. But
Yeah. It just didn't seem like it was always the best option, but it definitely is a good option.
it's a good option,
So
but I feel like it gets answered really easily. So
yeah, and then for the remaining six cards in your extra deck, you just opted to play a lot of one ofs here, just probably
yeah,
for like fringe situations. So like Phoenix,
right.
Unicorn, Tospina, Bomber, Borload, Dingirsu. Um, so what was your thought process behind all of these? I guess.
Well, the first thing you want in any Unchained list when it comes to your extra deck besides your Unchained monsters is that you want them to be darks,
Right.
so you can link them up with your what was it?
With
Your Rage and your
Rage or
Anguish.
Anguish, yeah,
Yeah. The only one
or
that you
even your
can't make
dog.
that's dark
Well,
is the Borload
right.
because that one requires three materials, and when you use the effect of Anguish or Rage, you have to use exactly two materials.
Exactly.
But
So
yeah, but Borload, I thought Borload would be better than Zero Boros if I had to choose one or the other,
yeah,
because Borload controls the game while Zero Boros like can be a big beat stick, and that's about it.
yeah, it's very hard to deal with too, especially like later on in the duel, because
Uh-huh.
when it comes back, like after it banishes everything, it could just sneak in and win the game, which is crazy.
Right,
But
but I just thought setting it up would be really hard, so I
it,
just
it
preferred
yeah, it does seem
Borload.
like it is a bit hard to set it up.
Yeah.
And then I think so the Phoenix, did that ever come up at all?
The Phoenix, not really, but I still feel like you should still play it
Yeah, it seems
just for the
like
fact that it's just a really good staple.
right.
And then Unicorn actually is one of the better ones in this
Yeah.
deck
Would
just because you
you
could,
continue? Sorry.
yeah, just because you can make it off a Rage on your opponent's turn and you more or less remove two cards from their field
Hmm.
that aren't destruction, if that matters,
Right.
with
So
just one monster, more or less.
it seems like you'd probably want to play more copies of Unicorn. Was it ever like a problem if you like banish this? I mean, obviously, it seems like it would be a problem if you banish this the extravagance, but did it ever like come up? Like, would you want to play more copies of Unicorn for that reason?
Potentially, but I do think that even if you don't have Unicorn, just going in, just sitting on Anguish is not bad because it threatens your opponent. Like if they just sit on something, then I could just link it off.
Yeah, just like the threat of a unicorn incoming is kind of like enough for them
Right.
sometimes.
If,
Yeah.
yeah, sometimes I think that's enough, and I think Anguish and Anguish also still works with the rest of the deck. Where if they manage to destroy Anguish, then you just get one of your Fiend monsters from your graveyard back. So it's not the worst thing to make even if you lose your Unicorn.
Right. I think the rest of it is fairly good. I think the
Yeah,
Dingirsu is also like a really cool thing. I don't think it would. Did it ever come up at
it's
all to you in
no
the? Yeah, it just
like
seems like
I only
really
really
insane though.
made Rage, a bit of Anguish. I definitely liked Unicorn,
Hmm.
and then and then was Abomination. The Link 4 one was the disappointment.
Yeah.
But beyond that, I think the list is pretty nice. Didn't
Right.
really make any of the Link 4s like Borreload or Topologic or Dingirsu, but
Hmm.
I think they're still good inclusions.
That's good. So moving on to your side deck, obviously we have like the non-meta trinity, I guess. So
Yeah,
Pankratops, Lightning Storm, evenly. Essentially,
it's
they're all
just
accomplishing the same thing, just board
the
breaking.
whole point is, yeah, they're very good go second cards. That's the whole point.
Right.
Like no matter what deck you're playing against, they're probably gonna do something. If you threaten the idea of Lightning Storm, then they're probably gonna start throwing things into defense position when they don't have higher defense points, so you could just run over them.
Hmm.
It Lightning Storm's good for that reason, even in decks where it's like, well, you could just put everything in defense. And then evenly matched for obvious reasons. It's evenly matched.
Yeah.
I don't think a lot of non-meta decks could recover after it evenly hit.
Yeah. Pretty much not very,
Most
if at
decks
all.
can't,
Yeah.
but and then Darkholds, because it's a board wipe. I don't think there was a lot of monsters that protected themselves from destruction, so it was essentially like, do you want to play what's its face, Dark Rule no more, or do you want to play Darkhold? Darkhold, it also synergizes with your Unchained monsters in some situations, so why not?
Yeah, and it's very similar to like I don't know if you played in the format, but like MST and like targeting your own like Metaphos cards. Uh, I don't know if you
Uh,
recognize the synergy, but like usually you just like pop your own Metaphos spells and traps to get like advantage, like worst case scenario. Definitely is reminiscent of that, I guess.
uh,
But
yeah, but speaking about back removal, there's Twin Twisters, and the
right,
reason why I opted Twin Twisters over, say, Cosmic Cyclone is, for one, Twin Twisters help simplify the game state better, and for two, Twin Twisters also helps pop your own back row.
right. Since it's trading
So
two for two, and you can
so you
also
could
target
proc
your
their
own.
effects. Yeah, so you could proc their effects, and well, Cosmic is just a target removal. So
Yeah, that makes sense. It's actually kind of interesting that you also didn't opt to play MST here instead of the Twin Twisters, but I mean, it makes sense just because
uh,
like the discard like target two is also super strong.
I
Because
felt like,
typically when you're setting this in, you're probably just setting it against back row anyways.
right,
So
you probably want to
there's no
kill
reason
more
to
than
play
one back
MST.
row. So
Yeah, so I guess that does make more sense than the
yeah,
MST.
and you're trying to simplify the game state, and
Right.
then the kaiju of the format, because Gamma was banned, I believe.
Yeah.
It was there in case like I had situations where I didn't want to destroy the opponent's monster, and I guess killing a kaiju isn't too hard for this deck.
Hmm.
I don't know if I really made it or sided into it, but
Yeah.
I,
I
I
mean,
I still think it was still a good side card for that specific situation. So I also anticipated maybe somebody going for like a Goki build where they end on like two like towers.
yeah, the Link
And
four, I think it is.
if I Kumongus one of them, I think the other one gets weaker,
I
and
don't
it gets a
remember
little
honestly, but yeah, it could definitely be like super strong to just like humongous
right.
one of
Just
them and then like use the dog to like link off the
yeah,
humongous.
it there are ways to get around
Right.
towers, but and then the Ghostmore is just an extra copy of Valor, more or less.
Yeah. Did you ever side this in?
I did actually.
Oh,
It did come up. I think it was all right. I don't know if I would change that. I still think it was a good decision.
right. Is there anything like else that you'd change in your ratios, I guess, of this list, or do you think everything
Uh,
was pretty solid? I mean, obviously it was pretty solid, but like in hindsight, what was
besides
better?
besides running three uh was Abomination.
Yeah.
I think the deck was pretty good for what it did.
Yeah. So maybe some
I
changes
I
just in like the extra
yeah,
deck.
like that's like the only one I could probably think about like that I should have done before the tournament. Like I don't like to think about it too much in retrospect in
Mm-hmm.
terms of like what I should have done in terms of like oh I should have played a different card over Ghost Ogre or a different card over Call By.
Yeah.
I still think those are solid cards for the purpose that they fulfill. So
Right. Might need more
yeah,
testing before you ultimately decide which one's better or worse to keep.
yeah, I think Abomination. Yeah, that's just the only one I shouldn't run at 3. But I think yeah, besides that, the list is how it should be.
Yeah, I think the list. I mean, obviously performed really strong. Won you the whole thing, so did really well. But yeah, that's gonna do it. Is there any last words you have to say?
Uh, if there was any last words, part of it, one thing I really learned over the tournament, rather than like, because I was just practicing against a bot before I went to the tournament, was that you're in many cases rather than making like rage like that being like your turn one combo, you're just better off sitting on multiple monsters that float.
Yeah,
And that's
definitely.
what that's like. I learned that the hard way, but like once I did that in tournament, like the deck got like it got significantly better in the grind game, and
Yeah.
I liked it that way. And I think what was it the runner up Maticus? He's coming back this time for the next tournament, so look forward to that.
Yeah. But yeah, that's gonna do it for this video, and yeah, we'll see you guys, and hopefully, I believe Maticus' deck profile's next actually, so we'll
Yeah.
get onto that one, I guess. All right, thanks for watching, everyone.